Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. My last video about explaining the lore of Plum River actually did pretty well, and I thought it would be fun to do another one and kind of just talk about everything that's kind of going on. So where we kind of left off in the last video was pretty much the beginning of the story. Like when he meets the first three other characters of the mains. And keep in mind, out of the mains, they're kind of the most intricate. Like, there's Luna, and then there's Bethany, and they're introduced later in the story, and I kind of know how, but I kind of don't know how they kind of met each other. Essentially, they live in, like, they start to get settled in, and then at one point, Clayton invites Garrett and Addie to stay in his house with them because their house isn't great, and also they're in a interdimensional crisis where food is limited, shelter is limited, building supplies are limited. So most of the time in their culture, people live together for multiple years, and among the years that they live together, like, you're talking full-on family, like, generational homes, like, all kinds of stuff like that. And, for Addie and Garrett, when the dimensions kind of shifted apart, their parents were on the other side of that, so they kind of had to grow up alone. And keep in mind, they have a younger sister, Summer, and Summer is actually back home with their parents, but Plum River is not where Addie and Garrett are from, and it's actually something discussed later in the series when they start getting, like, talking about families and stuff. Most of the main characters are actually orphans, including Hannah, Bethany, Clayton, and a few other people, but we're not going to get too far into that. I'd first like to say how they meet Bethany. And up at this point, Bethany and Hannah had already known each other, and they kind of settle in. They kind of just relax for a little bit, and then after being gone for so long, he wants to learn about what's happened in all the time that he's been gone, like the 200 to 400 years that he's been gone. And the reason I say that is because in the interstellar war that's going on, time wasn't really kept as a sacred thing in Plum River, so you only really know by family accounts and elders. And so they go basically to a nearby town and they meet Bethany, because Bethany, while being a seamstress, also is a well-known gossiper and a part of the Blah Blah Sisterhood for Girls, which also I will be making a video on that, because the lore of that is a whole thing in and of itself, because that they use a type of Victorian fan language, but instead of fans, it's with jewelry. And actually that's one of the ways they're able to communicate without people knowing in other dimensions, is because it's a universal language only taught to trusted members. And so, basically they show up at Bethany's shop and they kind of introduce themselves, and then Hannah tells Bethany, she's like, hey, do you know anything about blah, blah, blah? And Bethany kind of looks, and she's like, well, I don't, but my grandmother's book might. So then she pulls out this massive history book of her family, and Bethany's family actually was there, like, shortly after Clayton's family had, like, after that thing, shortly after that had happened. Her great-great-great-grandmother was in the interstellar war. Specifically, she heard stuff the night that it happened. Her we'll just say her grandmother, or her ancestor. Her ancestor heard everything that happened, and actually, in the burning of Plum River, she jumped into the lake, and she sat there all night until the ash had cleared. And then she kind of figured out where she wanted to go from there, because not all of the wood was scorched, but a lot of the wood across one side of the lake was. And believe it or not, that's the reason that most people stay out of where Clayton's house was built, was because to a lot of people in Plum River, it's seen as sacred ground because of the legend. And there are a lot more legends, such as if you go on that ground, you will get kidnapped and taken to the spirit world. And, you know, the population of Plum River is only about 700 people-ish. That's a rough estimate, because you've got our main characters, their parents, and some of their extended relatives. And the logistics of the world are still kind of like, I need to actually get them down, because I need to actually get a timeline of everything and what happens, because it's important to know what goes where and what timeline. And so you've got this book, and it basically tells everything that happened, and it says that Grayville pretty much, like the guy who's evil, don't really have a name for him, so I just call him Grayville. Grayville basically tries to invade Plum River multiple times. Like, throughout Bethany's ancestors' lives, he has tried to raid Plum River 3 separate times. It is not a one-and-done type of thing. His first phase was trying to figure out how like, they had powers, and it actually says so in the book that Clayton's family had mysterious powers that were unknown to most people. And then Garrett, Addie, Hannah, and Bethany look at him and they ask, "Do you have a power?" And then he says, "Of course I do. I have an ability. What are you talking about? Do you not?" And then they say, "We have no clue how to get them or what it would be." So essentially, the art of abilities that are passed down and created completely went away when everything was gone, right? So they look at him and they're like, he basically tells them, "You have to eat a plum. Did you not have a plum ceremony?" And they said, "No. Like, a lot of fresh fruit is incredibly rare, so you typically only get it on your birthdays. And even then, a lot of the time, it is some form of melon that can feed multiple people." So then he looks around and he's like, "Have you guys even ever seen a plum?" And they're like, "No, we've never seen a plum, never eaten one, never touched one. We don't even know what they look like or what color they are." So then they head back to his house, and he looks around a little bit, and he looks through some of the stuff that was there, and he finds a plum pit. He conceals it from them because he doesn't know what they'll do, or if he can trust them entirely yet. He's kind of playing his cards out, because while he wants to trust them, he doesn't know that he can, because he's still skeptical of his evil grandfather. And so, yeah, and basically, he kind of shows them what he can do, and they're like, "So would we have powers similar to this?" And then he kind of has to explain that each person makes their own ability, and the only way an ability can be transferred is by being taught one. And they were like, "How do you teach one?" And basically, you have to be given a grimoire by Ethelina herself. Like, it has to be an actual spell book that an author of a ability uses, and it cannot be opened by anyone other than the person who made it, or someone given permission. And that's the reason that later down the story, no one has the ability of fire, no one has the ability of a lot of the main 9, except for Luna. And there are reasons that I'll get into in another video. So it's basically a whole, oh, what's this? What's this? Kind of back and forth. And he kind of explains to them, like, he doesn't know what they'll get as abilities. It's kind of a thing where when you get one, it's completely randomized by your personality, your likes, your dislikes, what drives you, what motivates you, what you think of yourself. It's all dependent on personality, like, and that's one of the really interesting things about it, is because while it is all about personality and thought process, sometimes you'll end up with an ability that is completely opposite to your personality, because a single thought can completely change the way you get an ability. And because basically you eat a plum and it's hallucinogenic, it's actually kind of funny. And you kind of start figuring out how you use your ability later down the line. And yeah, that's all the time I have for this video. I don't want to make it too long, and I will see you guys in the next video. If this one gets over 50 views, I will probably make another one. So we'll see. All right, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.